and aloha. First, thank you to Nerdiala, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and Mark Weber of the Computer History Museum for asking me to talk today. I am honored. In 1993, as a community college student in Hawaii, I created one of the first 25 websites in the world. It served as a template for those who wanted to add images, sounds, and video to their web pages. I spent the next 5 years traveling the world, evangelizing the web, telling rooms full of people that had never used the internet what the World Wide Web was and how it could change their lives. And after making that initial website, I spent the next 20 years working in and alongside countless startups that closely followed the evolution of the web, from site design and e-commerce to advertising, crowdfunding, and machine learning. I watched as many of my colleagues transformed from starry-eyed college students into the tech millionaires that you read about today. I also experienced the effects of the great dot-com boom and bust of 2000. Within 5 years of coming to Silicon Valley as a dropout with no experience, I had stock options worth 9 figures. But within 2 years after that, had nothing left but my car, my computer, and $1,000 in the bank. And my story is not unique. I am acutely aware of the power of great technological change, both for better and for worse. So, what has happened to the World Wide Web? And what state is it in, really? Of course, it has enabled people to do incredible things. But today, we also live in a world of data privacy breaches, social media anxiety, fake websites, ad fatigue, dangerous misinformation, and internet addiction. I believe that we still have a very long way to go to reach the web's true potential. Many get the World Wide Web and the internet confused. The web runs as a service on the internet in the same way that text messaging runs as a service on the cell phone network. Put simply, the internet is the physical hardware that connects computers, while the web is one of the many software-based services that run on top of it. The web itself is made up of 3 things: web servers, which provide information, web browsers, which consume information, and web standards as defined by the World Wide Web Consortium. Any technology that does not use any of these 3 things is not a part of the World Wide Web. So when I refer to the web, that's what I'm talking about. When people talk about the term Web3, they generally mention 2 things: cryptocurrencies and decentralized services. Today's cryptocurrencies actually have nothing to do with the World Wide Web, as they are merely what are called speculative financial products, like any other, and must be treated as such. They don't require web standards, browsers, or servers to use at all. And technologies that enable anonymous yet verifiable forms of payment can be implemented in countless ways that have nothing to do with the infrastructure of the World Wide Web itself. So instead, let's talk about the other part of Web3, decentralized services. The idea is that any service on the internet can be split among peers, where every member of the system has the same potential to both provide as well as consume the service. This enables the system to be more stable, more efficient, and less prone to attacks or outages from participants. A good example of this is peer-to-peer file sharing networks. In a centralized system, a single server in one central place would have to share a file over and over again to anyone that requests it. In a decentralized system, every person requesting the file downloads it while they share the file to others requesting it at the same time. To put it another way, everyone requesting the file acts as a server, not just a downloader. So there is no longer one central place to share from. Every member of the system now has the potential to share that file. Collectively, every member of a decentralized system works together to provide a powerful, efficient service that no one member can provide by themselves. Just because a service is decentralized, however, does not mean that its participants are automatically anonymous. Any degree of anonymity can be built into a service, whether it's centralized or not. That's up to the people that create the service. What most people don't know is that the web was envisioned as a decentralized system. In 1989, its inventor, Tim Berners-Lee, originally called it Mesh, and its initial proposal listed decentralization as one of its core requirements. It even referenced Ted Nelson, who invented the word hypertext and architected similar systems starting in the early 1960s. By the early 1990s, there were really only two groups of people working on web technologies: nuclear physicists and college students. What did they have in common? Well, at the time, they were the only people in the world that had free, around-the-clock access to a fast, symmetrical internet connection. When I say symmetrical internet connection, that means a connection whose upload speed is equal to its download speed. When you're developing a decentralized system, that's actually vitally important. Otherwise, information in the system ends up flowing mostly one way. Resource sharing and coordination between members of the system then becomes difficult, if not impossible, and the system becomes much more vulnerable to attacks. 30 years ago, we thought that one day everybody would have a connection like the one we had access to. We could share massively sized files amongst ourselves in seconds. With infrastructure like that, coming up with new ideas for things you could do on the web was easy. At the time, we thought that everybody would have a web server in their home. That way, everyone would have complete control over the content that they put on the internet. So, what happened? Well, by the mid-1990s, many companies were scrambling to find ways to bring web access into people's houses. The method that basically won out was via the cable TV connection that most folks already had. But these companies treated internet access like television, a one-way communications medium parceled out to an audience of passive consumers. It fit perfectly with their existing business model and operations. So while download speeds were enough for people to view images and videos on web pages, they were only given just enough upload speed to register the click on a shopping cart button. And the only people that ended up running web servers were not individuals, but corporations, who were the only ones that could afford fast, symmetrical internet connections. 30 years later, where are we now? The web has thoroughly optimized itself towards this lopsided consumer-based infrastructure. Community-based fiber networks are being fought against at every turn by entrenched monopolies. And as it turns out, chances are you are already running not just one, but many web servers in your home. There's one in your Wi-Fi router. There's likely one in your smart TV and one in your streaming media player. But all of these servers were made to optimize the consumption of content. None of them were made to allow you to create, control, edit, authenticate, publish, sell, or lease data, content, and services that you make available to the public. Instead, today you accomplish these things by paying many web companies to do them for you, either with money or, more valuably, with your attention and time. Imagine a device in your house, apartment, or RV that serves as the gateway for every form of digital communication that you participate in, whether it's text, email, voice, or a post on a website. This device is the main storage and control point for all digital media and services that you wish to sell or publish, including websites, images, music, videos, ebooks, software, services, anything on your own terms. It serves as the primary authentication point that verifies whether or not a digital creation or any piece of information on the internet originated with you and controls how accessible it should be to the public. It serves as the verifiable, secure archive for all of your personal data, such as medical, legal, and financial information, which you can share immediately as needed with other organizations on your own terms. It helps you notarize information, whether it's a work of art, a legal document, or a vote. It coordinates with other similar devices on the internet to securely back itself up and distribute, authenticate, and publish your content worldwide. Imagine being able to combine the power of multiple devices of those you trust, family, friends, friends of friends, neighbors, and colleagues, to share real-time news and media directly with each other, to trade and sell resources within your group, or to form cooperatives to buy and sell goods and services collectively. Imagine not having to pay a hosting firm to run your website and receive your email, or a cloud service to store, secure, and authenticate your content and personal information, or a data center to run your business. Imagine not having to use an endless parade of companies as middlemen in order to distribute, publish, sell, and verify images, videos, writings, software, services, and goods that you create. You could do all these things yourself with the help of every other web server on the internet, using one easy-to-use device that you have complete control over and can secure and authenticate with biometrics using your face or fingerprints, like your iPhone. One day, this device could very well be your iPhone, HomePod, or a Wi-Fi router, or an open source relative of it. This is the promise of a true decentralized web, one that is designed to empower individuals, not venture capitalists, financial institutions, or tech bros. Today, web-based companies like Facebook and Google depend on the use of data centers around the world to aggregate networking power, computing power, and storage capacity. But data centers only exist to make up for the fact that the web is not really decentralized. Data centers make up for the fact that your individual networking capacity is completely inadequate by design. On a decentralized web, services like Facebook and Google will still exist. They're public web services that provide aggregate content analysis and filtering. That's all they are. But they all depend mostly on content that you create. Unlike today, on a decentralized web, you would always have complete and immediate control of every piece of information you provide to these services, all authenticated and verified by you. There are a number of parts that can be used to make small steps towards a decentralized web. New biometric sign-in standards, secure crypto processors, the W3C's distributed ID standard, national standards for interoperable healthcare data, and standards relating to smart home hubs, such as Matter. Once people start to use these things in their daily lives, it will be a much smaller conceptual leap for them to imagine having an always-on personal server device that hosts their own websites, coordinates all of their digital communications, publishes, sells, and authenticates their digital creations, and secures and verifies personal healthcare, legal, and government-related digital information and services. Today, your smartphone, personal computer, Wi-Fi router, and smart home hub already do some of these things to different degrees. But to have one device that does all of these things is to have a device that embodies the ideal of internet-based resource sharing. And that, my friends, is exactly what the World Wide Web was made for. But to enable all of this to happen, there is only one foundational requirement. A real decentralized web requires a minimum level of what I call network equity. It requires a minimum level of symmetrical speed, responsiveness, access, and affordability for everyone connected to it. The web was meant to be for everybody, not just for those living in the right place, or for those that can afford it, or for those with the right technical knowledge, but absolutely everybody. There are no global standards for this kind of network equity. In the United States alone, internet access is pitiful. For 70% of Americans, upload speeds are a tiny fraction of download speeds. Internet access has not been seen or treated as the vital utility that all of us that have depended upon it during the pandemic know it is. Every developed nation has well codified, enforced standards for providing shelter, electricity, water, and sewage services to its citizens. It's well past time to make, implement, and enforce minimum standards for internet access. One of the first inflection points in the web's history came about when enough people used it so that e-commerce on a mass scale became possible. That enabled an ocean of new services, companies, and technologies. Another will come about when a certain percentage of people. It will be the start of a promising new era of the web, but only if those in control of the infrastructure and the funding and the policies have the courage to make it happen. Until that day, the web, and actually all public-facing services and media on the internet, will remain semi-centralized, consumer-oriented, ad-driven, privacy and copyright patchwork messes, and all that that entails. So for those who claim that they're creating empowering decentralized systems using today's infrastructure, whether or not they involve cryptocurrencies, NFTs, or blockchains. It's all a load of nonsense. These schemes will always be centralized to some degree so that somebody always holds the keys. Those with the fastest connections, those with the fastest GPUs, venture capitalists, financial institutions, tech bros, and the hackers that crash their systems, but not you. You will always have the least amount of control by design, as you do today. And to call these cryptocurrency schemes web anything is a complete insult to the spirit of the World Wide Web and flies in the face of everything that it has ever stood for. Decades from now, people will look back on this era of technology as being laughably wasteful, almost immoral. Just as we look back to the celebration of disposable plastics in the 1950s, from the perspective of a world now saturated with microplastics, people of the future will look back on millions of personal computers that require hundreds of watts of power, that generate hundreds of degrees of wasted heat, all in the service of entertainment. They will see coal-powered warehouses full of GPUs that use more energy annually than entire nations, all in the service of mining cryptocurrency while the world burns and floods. And they will see an internet optimized for the passive consumption of media and goods rather than active community-based resource sharing, all in the service of corporate monopolies. Over 30 years ago, the web's original tagline was, "Let's share what we know." But with the technology we have today, we can do so much better. We can share what we create. We can share our perspectives. We can share our problems so that others can share their potential solutions. And we can share our hopes so that others can share their dreams. Thank you.
Bueno, estamos nuevamente aquí en el Track Nerd y tenemos con nosotros a Kevin Hughes, que va a participar del Q&A, así que voy a pasar a darle la bienvenida. Hi Kevin, how are you?
Hello.
How are you doing?
Good to be here. Wonderful, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to start with a couple of questions. So first question, when torrents start being a headache for companies such as music record companies, internet providers start blocking end user access to torrents. How can Web3 avoid this kind of censorship?
Well, what I'm proposing is basically a properly distributed, decentralized part of the web that should have existed that has not really existed to date. The idea is that if you have a device in your house that is your web server, your own web server, you can see it as a place that is the one place that verifies your content. So, yes, I mean, you can make all sorts of services on top of an infrastructure like this, including file sharing or file distribution services like the ones that we see today. And any amount of anonymity can be put into these services just like any other similar services you can create on today's internet. So inherently, there is nothing that either encourages or prevents the kinds of technologies that allow you to do what you can today regarding your own content. But what you get in addition with a distributed authenticatable web is that imagine you have a web server running on a device that you can authenticate yourself to through, for instance, biometrics or other credentials that are tied to you personally, or like an organization. This works for everyone, both organizations or companies, as well as, more importantly, individuals. So you can verify every piece of content online in a service that requires verified content. You can trace it back to the owning organization or individual directly. And that can prevent a lot of issues that we see today in regards of people claiming other people's content as their own.
All right. So what else do you think it can be done to help the transition to Web3 from the state of the web that we have today?
Two things. The first is we need to begin to think about, in real terms, about what is needed. And I propose a new class of consumer electronics, a new type of communication device that people use in their homes every day. First, there is the radio, then the television, then the personal computer. And I'm proposing the idea of a personal server run all the time, just like your Wi-Fi router or your refrigerator. This becomes your personal hub for all communications to and from the internet, a place where you store and authenticate all content that you create. So getting that concept in people's minds that of the personal server is very important. Second, we need efforts to enhance the quality of the internet for everybody. We have very slow speeds for most people around the world. We have very slow upload speeds, non-symmetrical connections, very slow connections, high latency connections around the world. Mm-hmm. We have to get everyone, as many people as possible, to a minimum level. And I would suggest somewhere at least around 2 gigabits per second for everybody. And once you have an infrastructure like that, now the sky is the limit. Now you can begin to really do radically amazing things that are empowering for people.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. We ran out of time, but thank you so much for participating in Nerdiarla. And we hope we see you again in another edition.
I'd love to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Y ahora vamos a una tanda y volvemos enseguida.
Vamos a nerdear.